He was still catching up to the moment when I said it. 5 words he didn't expect. She is on her way. The room was quiet, still holding the hush of what we'd been talking about. Then the doorbell rang, and for the first time all night, the look on his face changed. Quick pause. If you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss what's next. And if you're new, welcome, you picked a good one to start with. Thanks for being here. Now let's begin. His fingers rested on my legs as I shifted close enough to feel the pause in his breath. The sheets were rumpled beneath us, the room holding on to the warmth of every glance and every breath. I shifted slightly, watching the way his breath hitched. How still everything suddenly felt between us. I leaned forward, bracing my hands on his chest, as his breath met mine in the space between us. He looked like he wanted to say something, but didn't. His grip on my sides held steady, as if waiting for the right moment. His eyes searched mine, but I stayed in control. Every motion felt deliberate, just enough to hold his focus exactly where I wanted it. I lowered my voice with a smile, tracing a slow line across his chest. Not yet. He nodded, silent breath catching in his throat. I shifted slightly and he exhaled hard, shoulders tensing beneath my hands. I didn't let go. I stayed with him, anchored in that moment, until neither of us needed to say anything more. I dropped forward with a laugh, heart racing as I pressed my forehead to his. He stayed quiet, still wrapped around me, like he hadn't quite returned from wherever we'd just been. It was the only moment I'd wanted, quiet and fully mine. I leaned close enough for him to hear me clearly, my voice soft. She's on her way. His body tensed. Who but the doorbell rang before he could finish. He froze. I smiled. His eyes stayed locked on mine as the sound of the doorbell echoed again. He didn't move. He just lay there, silent, stunned, unmoving. I kissed him once, slow, deliberate, then shifted off the bed and stood, the cool air wrapping around my skin. I reached for the silk robe draped over the chair, tied it loosely at my waist, and walked barefoot to the door without a word. I could feel him watching me, alert, now holding his breath. When I opened it, she was already smiling. Her dark hair fell over one shoulder in loose waves, and the wine-colored dress fit her perfectly, flowing with every step she took. She stepped inside without pause, her perfume warm and understated her presence, confident without needing explanation. "Wine?" I asked, already crossing toward the kitchen. "Sure," she murmured, her gaze gliding past me toward the man still waiting in our bed. I poured 3 glasses, the soft clink of glass against marble filling the quiet behind me. I heard the rustle of movement. By the time I turned, she was already at the bedroom doorway, one hand resting lightly on the frame. He had sat up the sheet low on his waist, his chest still rising and falling fast. Her eyes moved across him, steady and unreadable. "You look good," she said gently. His lips parted, but no words came. I brought her a glass first, then moved to him. His fingers brushed mine when I handed it over, unsteady, warm. His eyes hadn't left her. "She knows," I murmured, easing onto the bed beside him. "About that night you told me the dream." The name color rose up his neck. I sipped from my glass, then reached over and took his from his hand, setting it aside. She stepped into the room, each movement slow, intentional. She stopped just in front of him, close enough for him to feel how present she was. One hand lifted, and she reached out and touched his chest lightly without pressure. He looked at me again, uncertain. Asking, I gave him a single nod. She leaned in close enough that he could have kissed her, but didn't. He didn't pull away, and when he kissed her back, still stunned, still unsure, I rested my hand on my leg, aware of every breath between us. Their mouths stayed together longer this time. Her hand rose to the back of his neck, resting there as she leaned in closer. I watched his lips part under hers. His shoulders eased slowly, like he was letting the moment settle in. The asking in his eyes was gone now, replaced by hunger. I rose slowly, letting my robe fall open just enough as I stepped behind him. I stepped behind him, resting one hand at his side and the other lightly across his shoulder. My mouth found the spot beneath his ear warm flushed, and I kissed the spot gently, and his breath hitched. His hand found my side resting there. She didn't break rhythm. Her hand moved across his chest in a slow line. She paused for a second, her hand suspended like she was thinking through the moment. He gasped softly, the sound catching between our mouths, and I kissed the corner of his jaw as her fingers stilled, then pulled back slightly. I lowered myself beside him, thigh brushing his. The strap of her dress had already slid down one shoulder, letting the neckline of her dress shift slightly as she moved. She turned slightly, our eyes meeting. No question, no hesitation, just alignment. We moved closer together, instinctively aligned, each gesture unspoken but understood. Buttons slipped free, the sheet peeled back. Our fingers brushed as we moved in quiet tandem, revealing more than we spoke aloud. He inhaled sharply. One hand gripped the sheet, while the other brushed my hair back. She climbed onto the bed beside him, and his hand reached for her without thinking. She leaned into him, kissed him again, deeper this time, slower, and I moved closer. We surrounded him. I let my hand follow the line of his torso, steady and slow. She placed her hand on his leg, echoing the moment beside me. He leaned back, arms resting loosely at his sides, watching us both. I looked at her across his chest and reached out, gliding my palm from her collarbone, down her arm, letting the contact linger. No one spoke. The room didn't need sound. She leaned in toward my neck. His hand held my side with more weight than before, and I knew there was no turning away from what was unfolding. She was already seated beside him on the bed, facing him closely. When I leaned forward and kissed his mouth again, soft at first, then deeper until his grip on the bed tightened. He let out a shaky breath, another sound escaping before he caught himself. I pressed my palm to his chest, feeling a subtle shift beneath us as he adjusted and whispered against his skin, "Just feel us." His breath came out uneven and low. She moved closer, her body settling against his. I kissed along his jaw as she anchored herself on either side of his ribs. She repositioned herself, steadying her arms. Her hair brushed lightly against my cheek as she leaned in. The space between us, thickened bodies, pressing breath, slowing the kind of warmth that stays with you long after he reached for her hips for me. But I guided his hands back to rest beside him. I wanted him still completely. "Let us do this," I murmured, my mouth brushing his ear. "You just stay right here." One hand slid down the length of her spine as she leaned into him, slightly closing the space between them. The other slipped under his, to lace our fingers together. He was still quiet, focused, holding everything in. She leaned lower, trailing her lips along his neck. While I moved across his collarbone, I leaned in and pressed a brief kiss to his shoulder, then rested there. We stayed close, our focus completely aligned. I moved with intention, steady and firm. Anchored in the stillness, her body pressed behind mine arms, wrapping around my waist. I leaned into her. She leaned close, her breath grazing my neck, just once enough to make my voice catch mid-sentence. He turned toward the sound, his mouth parted, eyes unfocused, wild. Her hand found my thigh, grounding me, steadying me. I leaned in further, caught in the weight and quiet of the moment. Then something gave, unspoken and inevitable. Everything collided. The closeness, the stillness, emotion hit all at once, sharp and overwhelming. I folded forward, breath uneven, needing a second to catch up. One of her hands was still tangled in mine. I held still for a beat, letting the moment pass through me, and I let it stay. What do you think was going through his mind when she walked in? Would you have handled that moment differently, or just watched it unfold? Tell me in the comments, I'll be reading. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. Thanks for watching.